TED Talks are educational speeches. It's a global setup of conferences where speakers gather together to share information. They do this in the hopes of opening up doors to opening up free thinking for people and maybe changing society as a whole in the end. Ken Robinson was the first TED Talk that I watched. It seems to me that Ken Robinson is trying to communicate how the hierarchy of the education system that was designed to create cookie cutter humans to run the industrial age has, in the end, had a detrimental effect on our youth. If they do not fit into the form, they're given labels rather than being nurtured to flourish in their own unique strengths. This in turn inhibits them from reaching their full potential. A tool he used well in keeping the audience engaged was his humor. He was a very funny man. His humor was engaging. It kept his speech lively so that people were enjoying absorbing what he was sharing, kept their mind going and clicking while so they weren't falling asleep. I think his speech is effective because he communicates with the audience on their level with firsthand knowledge in the area of an educator. He uses examples of real people he is known as a teaching tool, their experiences of being shoved into the box that they don't fit in, and their experiences of someone trying to nurture their true gift. He also speaks from his own experience as an educator, as a professor from the higher education, and the setup of the system and how it is failing. The next person that I listened to was Chimamanda Adichie's TED Talk. She starts her speech at the beginning of her realization of being a feminist and her growth in the subject from her own life experiences. She comes full circle from the point of not even knowing she is a feminist to being a proud one, and being able to articulate exactly what that is, why it's not a bad thing, and why it's not a threat. She uses examples of actual events that have directly affected her or others she has known, the reality of society and our social structure to a point of where the sexism is, how it could be different, and how it actually affects both sexes in a negative way. So the next three speeches I got to choose myself. Thought I would try to step out of my comfort zone a little bit here. So I listened to Your Sexuality, Ask and Tell by Alyssa Royce. She nearly made me blush. She connected with the audience on an unspoken level, adding things that not everyone may agree with, but in a way that does not give much option, but to acknowledge a common understanding. I think there is a stigma with airing our sexual preferences. It does root from a fear of being judged by others. There's a freedom and a liberation that comes from being able to be honest about who we are and what we like. Being open about sex is still very taboo in society, even though it is everywhere we look. Commercials, social media. It's in the schools with the youth now more than it ever was before. It's terrible that we cannot just accept and love people for who they are. No one should feel shame to the point of wanting to kill themselves for their sexual orientation. She had passion and her visuals in her speech, which helped bring it to life and get her point across. I really enjoyed how she interacted with the crowd by the use of her survey. Not only did she collect informative research, she also opened the minds of the audience by sharing aspects with them in a very engaging way. She was a great audience-centered speaker. She spoke to the diversity of the audience, since sex and love is not cultural but human nature. So the next speech I listened to was Your Time Will Come by Laura Kate Whitney. She spoke about Birmingham, Alabama, and her own experience as a late bloomer. I have never been to Birmingham. Laura did an excellent job as a storyteller, painting a mental image of the city. When she began to speak, I had no connection with the city and thought it didn't sound very inviting. By the time she was done, I found myself rooting for this broken down city and its comeback. I thought her speech was soft spoken. It made me want to close my eyes and see this broken city coming back to life in full bloom. She spoke from her heart and reached the audience on a very psychological level, using their own senses and their own experiences. Most everyone in an audience will have a place that they come from and love. Most everyone is rooted for an underdog at some point in time. Her topic was Birmingham, but her objective was to make us believe in this broken city coming to life. She used her own personal experience of being a late bloomer to show us that everything does happen in its own time, and that's not always a bad thing. And this allowed us to connect with the city that she had grown to love. She gave it human characteristics, allowing it to become a thing and not a place. So my last speaker from TED Talks was Liz Molinar, and it was about treating the core problem of childhood trauma. Her central idea was very clear. She spoke to the occasion, keeping her speech to the point and limited in time. She was not there to persuade anyone. She spoke just to raise awareness. She was passionate about what she was speaking about. She connected with the audience in a simple way, using statistics about problems that everyone has to acknowledge as going on in the world. She kept her language simple so that anyone could understand what she was saying. Most people have suffered trauma and loss in their life, so most people are going to be able to understand the effects of trauma on their life. Since the idea of healing childhood trauma in order to heal addiction, mental illness may be a new concept to people, she kept her ideas from becoming overwhelming by not adding too many new ones and reiterating key points along the way to get her point across to people that maybe didn't understand the first time. So the TED Talks worked great, and they really got me thinking. So I'd like to add something on a personal note, because I do that kind of thing. In many of these speeches, they had a common core. First, Ken Robinson spoke about how we are destroying the creativity of the young by not nurturing their talents, which is holding them back from reaching their full potential. This actually has an effect on society in whole. Then I listened to Chimamanda speak about feminism and its effects on men and women. How society stifles what a young person could be by making them smaller to fit in a round hole when they are a square peg, then telling them they should be a square peg or you should let the square peg lead. After that, Alyssa talked about how certain people's sexual preference is not accepted by society as a whole. It can be very shameful for people to spend their whole life trying to fit an idea of something that they can never be. For some people, it's so painful that they eventually step out of their force role, causing self-destruction and causing destruction to others. Even worse, sometimes they commit suicide. How does Laura fit into all this? Her speech is about how at some point, everyone and everything's time will come. It made me think of society and social acceptability or lack thereof. When will the time come that people will start accepting each other and loving one another for who they really are at the core? She mentioned how in time, everything runs its course and some things take longer than others. When will society's time come? I wonder why there is standardized testing that tells a child they're not good enough compared to others. Maybe they're a dancer that will never get the chance to dance because the dancing doesn't fit inside the box. Why can't a woman make as much money as a man when she was born to lead and sit at the top? Why do they have to sacrifice for marriage and make themselves smaller? That is not what makes a man feel like a man, even though that's what society has portrayed. Why can't a person love whom they choose and enjoy that love how they choose without shame and ridicule? Then there was Liz. She spoke about childhood trauma and how it affects so many people, causing depression, addiction, mental illnesses, and even, unfortunately, suicide. We as humans will always face pain caused by others. All of these speakers talked about how we have found it socially acceptable to shut children down and make them fit molds that they may not fit, making them feel that they cannot be themselves, holding them back from reaching their full potential. If that is not painful enough, then add the destruction of true trauma on top of it. There's no wonder that the illnesses that are destroying so many people just continue to grow. Where's the love? Why is it swept under the rug and made into television programs like Dance Moms? Talk about trauma to a child. That is destroying a child with their own gifts and passions, and people tune in to watch it. Society needs to change. What we find acceptable needs to change. How we approach subjects need to change. No matter the culture, the race, or the sex, we are all humans and we need to do something to save our youth and ourselves. What can you do today to make a difference? I'm going to start with my children. Thank you.